So, quick history lesson. How did we get here? Well, looking back pre-uniform guidance, prior to December 26, 2013, federal grants were previously administered under the old OMB circulars, right? So you had OMB A122, OMB A133, and it brought together all of the pieces that uniform guidance represents now. So it brought together administrative requirements, it brought together cost principles, it brought audit requirements. Well, now uniform guidance contains all of those things within itself, and it's basically just broken out into specific subparts, right? A through F. And so on December 26, 2013, OMB issued this final guidance called Uniform Guidance, or Uniform Grant Guidance, as you hear it referred to in many of the industry periodicals and whatnot. And so this initial set of uniform guidance was then, we call it Uniform Guidance 1.0. It was put into effect for awards issued on or after December 26, 2014. For me, this was really the turning point where I started transitioning from audit to consulting because, in many ways, when uniform guidance was first issued, the federal government was not giving you additional funding in your grants to learn and adapt to these new requirements and really help you become compliant. And so there was a big knowledge gap. I think in many ways, there's still a knowledge gap in terms of what are the expectations when receiving federal grants with respect to compliance. What are we expected to do so that we can get clean audits and we can continue fulfilling these programs? So this was a turning point really for a lot of folks where you had to really kind of invest yourself to learn these new requirements that were included in uniform guidance. As uniform guidance first started, being applied, as you probably know today, uniform guidance is not uniform. You'll hear that quite a bit. And ultimately, what folks are trying to communicate there is that in addition to uniform guidance, which is OMB's guidance, there are also agency supplements that specifically apply to funding that they award or that they issue. So, for example, Department of Energy under 2 CFR 910. You've also got HHS has codified their own version of uniform guidance in 45 CFR 75. A lot of it is the same, but there are some differences, and it creates confusion for folks. So, as part of this initial publishing a Uniform Guidance 1.0, there was the expectation that it would need to be updated as things were learned, as the regulations, and kind of the operations of these grant programs changed over time. And so there was a mandate in there that uniform guidance would be updated about every 5 years. And so OMB kind of stayed true to that in August 13th of 2020. And OMB issued its first kind of multi-part revision to uniform guidance on that date. When it was first issued on August 13th, there was actually two provisions that were applicable that same day and immediately, and that was the prohibition on covered telecommunication devices and video surveillance equipment, the prohibition on certain Chinese national manufacturers, and then also some of the termination provisions that were included that strengthened the federal government's ability to terminate your award if it no longer met the agency's, essentially their initiatives or their goals. From there, though, the rest of the revisions, they were put into effect for awards issued on or after November 12th, 2020. So this was kind of the first, kind of instance of applicability of Uniform Guidance 2.0. And then from there, come around another 4 or 5 years, we were right back in that cycle. And so on April 22nd, 2024, OMB issued the latest and most comprehensive revision to Uniform Guidance, which we would refer to as Uniform Guidance 3.0. And that brings us to today. And so, your next logical question is probably, well, when should we expect this thing to be effective? Your eyes are not deceiving you. You're not having vision problems. The effective date is fuzzy. It's unclear, as you can see on the slide. Ultimately, the effective date for this final guidance is October 1, 2024. Okay, that's what it says in the Federal Register in the final rule. However, there is a kind of a gray area there. Federal awarding agencies may elect to apply the final guidance to federal awards issued prior to October 1, 2024, but they're not required to do so. So you can have early agency adopters essentially. For agencies applying the final guidance before October 1, 2024, the effective date must be no later than June 21, 2024. And I think the expectation is going to be for many of the requirements, it's going to be that it'll apply to awards issued on or after those dates. So, what does that mean? Ultimately, I would say for you, it's important to know who your funder is, identify each of the funding agencies associated with your grants, and then make sure that you're monitoring, kind of the grant agreements that you're being presented with, or the amendments or modifications that you're receiving on existing grants. They could start appearing as early as June 21st, 2024. Okay. Other agencies, potentially, I would say like HHS, for example, who knows? They might wait all the way until October because they need to figure out how they're going to either revise or administer, 45 CFR 75 along with these revisions to uniform guidance. Ultimately, 45 CFR 75 wasn't updated for many of the revisions in November of 2020. So should there be an expectation that they're going to make these revisions in 2024? I don't know. I think it'll be yet to be seen. But you'll want to start paying attention to this starting June 21st. So, as I mentioned, not super clear, but you could expect it to be coming in effect, very quickly, based on your funding agency's implementation guidance.